Alien Girl thought the human's warm pulse was a signal. Her blushing correction softened him. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main characters. It was a cold, crisp evening on a far-off planet. The kind of chill that made even the thickest armor feel like it wasn't enough. The wind howled through the vast, open plains, carrying with it the scent of something unfamiliar and cold. As Commander Andrew would trudge through the snow, he couldn't help but feel the weight of his mission pressing down on him. Earth had been invited to participate in an intergalactic exchange program, and his role as a liaison between humans and the alien races was crucial. But this wasn't the type of mission he was used to. Normally, he was involved in combat, in strategy, never in diplomacy. That was exactly why he found himself walking through this unfamiliar alien city, feeling awkward in his formal attire, his boots crunching against the frozen earth. His assignment for the day was simple: escort the alien ambassadors, show them around, and learn about their cultures. Easy enough, he thought. At least, that's what he expected. But when they entered the grand hall of the city's main building, everything shifted. There, standing before him, was Zyra, an alien from a distant world, her blue skin shimmering under the lights, her long, silver hair flowing like liquid light. Her eyes, a shade of violet he'd never seen before, locked onto his with an intensity that caught him off guard. She was the ambassador's representative, someone who would be with him throughout the tour. But there was something about her that intrigued him, more than just her stunning appearance. There was a quiet strength in her posture, something that reminded him of Earth's most capable leaders. As they began to walk through the building, Andrew noticed Zyra was glancing at him in a way that seemed more than just polite. Her gaze lingered, and her movements were deliberate, yet graceful, like the flow of a river. At first, he thought nothing of it. It was a cultural exchange, after all, and he was used to the occasional awkward glance. But then, as they entered a gallery filled with art from various species, things took an unexpected turn. Andrew, feeling a strange warmth spreading through him, casually placed his hand on a nearby railing, and it was then that he felt something strange. His pulse was elevated, and he couldn't quite explain why. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary, just a simple physical reaction to the situation. But Zyra, noticing the subtle change in his demeanor, seemed to misinterpret the warmth of his pulse. She blushed deeply, her cheeks taking on a soft pink hue, and immediately pulled back, as if embarrassed. "Is something wrong?" she asked, her voice soft but carrying a trace of concern. Andrew, now realizing his mistake, quickly apologized, but the misunderstanding lingered in the air. He hadn't realized that in her culture, certain physical responses could be interpreted as signals. Zyra, however, wasn't the type to let the misunderstanding fester. With a sheepish smile, she corrected herself, her earlier embarrassment melting away as she leaned in slightly, offering a more genuine, less guarded smile. "I thought your warmth was a signal," she admitted. "But I misunderstood. I'm sorry." The apology, coupled with the gentle tone of her voice, immediately softened Andrew's demeanor. It wasn't often that he was caught off guard, but there was something about Zyra's openness that made him feel at ease. Her blush faded, and Andrew couldn't help but chuckle softly, his own awkwardness giving way to the quiet bond that was slowly forming between them. The tension that had built up from the misunderstanding seemed to dissipate as they continued their tour, the warmth of their connection growing with every step they took together. And for the first time that day, Andrew felt the cold, harsh environment of the alien world fade away, replaced by the comforting presence of someone who, despite their differences, seemed to understand him more than he expected. As they continued their tour through the gallery, Andrew and Zyra found themselves standing in front of a large holographic painting depicting the landscapes of Zyra's homeworld. The colors swirled like a dream, a mix of iridescent blues, greens, and violets that reminded Andrew of the calm before a storm. The vibrant energy of the piece seemed to stir something deep within him. He could tell that it held special meaning for Zyra. She stood silently, her violet eyes reflecting the swirling patterns as if she were lost in thought. This painting, Zyra finally spoke, her voice soft but steady, represents the time before my people settled on other planets. It's the last piece of our world that we carry with us. It's a reminder of who we were. Andrew glanced at her, seeing the raw emotion in her expression. The weight of her words hung in the air, and for a moment, he forgot about the cultural differences, the mission, everything. It was just the two of them, connected by the shared understanding of the importance of where they came from. Zyra turned toward him, noticing the change in his expression. Her smile returned, though it was tinged with something deeper now, something more vulnerable. It's strange, she said, almost to herself, how something as simple as a painting can hold so much of a people's history. It's like every stroke of color is a story. Andrew nodded, the conversation flowing effortlessly now. I get that, he replied. Humans have their stories too. Art, music, it's all a way to hold on to what matters. Zyra's eyes softened as she studied him for a moment longer. You understand, she said quietly, in a way that I didn't expect. A slight blush crept onto her cheeks again, and Andrew's heart skipped a beat as he realized that this moment, their connection, was no longer just about the diplomatic mission. It was about something real, something they both shared. I try to, he said with a smile. The gallery seemed to grow quieter around them, as if the world outside had faded away, leaving only the two of them in this intimate exchange. Zyra took a step closer, her presence filling the space between them. I think, she said slowly, her voice barely above a whisper, that we're more alike than I thought. Andrew didn't answer immediately. He simply stood there, caught between his duty and the pull he felt toward her, something that went beyond the simple friendship they had begun to form. But in that moment, there was no rushing. No need to say anything at all, just the understanding that existed between them, as they stood side by side, watching. The painting that had so deeply affected Zyra, something shifted in the air, something unspoken, yet undeniable. It was the kind of shift that happens when two people, despite their differences, realize that they are not as far apart as they once thought. Their hearts, just like the swirling patterns on the painting before them, had begun to connect. The quiet hum of the gallery's air conditioning filled the silence as they continued to gaze at the artwork. It was peaceful, but beneath the calm, a subtle tension lingered, the promise of something more. But for now, they were content to share this moment, lost in the beauty of the art and the unspoken bond that was slowly, but surely, forming between them. As the tour continued, the sun began to set, casting an orange glow across the horizon that bathed the alien city in a warm, surreal light. The buildings, with their towering spires and translucent surfaces, reflected the changing sky, creating an almost dreamlike atmosphere. Andrew and Zyra walked side by side, the weight of the day's events still lingering between them, but there was an undeniable sense of ease now that hadn't been there before. They had exchanged glances, small smiles, and quiet words, each one building a bridge of understanding. As they reached the edge of the city, they paused by a balcony overlooking a vast, shimmering lake that stretched out to the horizon. The soft breeze carried with it the scent of blooming flowers, something alien but surprisingly pleasant. This is one of my favorite places, Zyra said, her voice low and contemplative. It's where I come to think, to remember. Andrew nodded, taking in the view, but his attention was drawn to the way Zyra's expression softened. She seemed different now, not the ambassador with a stoic facade, but a person, vulnerable and open. He could see how much this place meant to her. It's beautiful, he said, his voice quiet, almost reverent. Zyra glanced at him, her eyes meeting his with a soft intensity. Yes, she agreed, it is. But more than that, it's a reminder of everything we've lost, everything we've had to leave behind. Her words hung in the air, and for a moment, Andrew didn't know what to say. He wasn't sure how to respond to that kind of loss, not in a way that would feel right. But the silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. Instead, it felt natural, as if they were both content to simply exist in the moment, sharing a quiet understanding. After a few moments, Zyra let out a soft sigh, and with a small smile, she turned to him. I didn't think you would understand, she said with a hint of surprise in her voice. Andrew raised an eyebrow. Why is that? Humans, she started, a touch of amusement creeping into her tone. You're so different. Your emotions, the way you express them, it's almost overwhelming. Andrew chuckled, shaking his head. I don't know about that. But I do know that sometimes it's okay to feel. He paused, turning his gaze back to the lake. And it's okay to share that with someone else. Zyra watched him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. But then, as if making a decision, she nodded slowly. Maybe you're right, she said, her voice softer now. Maybe we do have more in common than I thought. The warmth of the evening wrapped around them, the quiet of the world settling in as they stood together, side by side, overlooking the peaceful waters. There was still so much they didn't understand about each other's worlds, about each other's lives, but in that moment, it didn't seem to matter. They were two beings, from different places, standing together on the same ground, sharing something that transcended words. The sun dipped lower, casting a final burst of light over the lake, and for a brief second, everything seemed perfect, like the whole universe had paused just for them. It was a fleeting moment, but a moment nonetheless, one that neither of them would forget. And as they stood there, taking in the last rays of the day, Andrew felt a deep, unexpected connection to Zyra. He didn't know what the future held, but right then, it didn't matter. They had this moment, and that was enough. The next day, Andrew found himself once again walking alongside Zyra, but this time, the atmosphere was different. The slight tension that had existed between them was gone, replaced by something more comfortable, even warm. As they walked through the bustling market district of the alien city, Andrew couldn't help but notice how the people, no, the species, around them seemed to move in perfect harmony with their surroundings. The buildings were alive with color, their surfaces shifting as if they themselves were breathing, and the air smelled faintly of strange spices and unfamiliar flowers. Zyra led the way, showing Andrew the finer details of her world, the intricacies of her culture that he would have never noticed on his own. She was an excellent guide, explaining the significance of each thing they encountered. This is where my people first began to trade, she explained, stopping in front of a large market stall filled with shimmering fabrics. It was here, centuries ago, that we learned to understand the value of cooperation. It's not just about bartering goods. It's about the exchange of ideas, of knowledge. Andrew, intrigued, leaned in to get a closer look at the fabrics. The way the colors shifted, almost like they had a life of their own, was mesmerizing. He had never seen anything like it. It's beautiful, he said, genuinely impressed. Zyra smiled, a flicker of pride crossing her face. It is, she agreed. But the real beauty comes from the way we've evolved to work together. Even though we're so different from each other, we've learned to find common ground. As they continued through the market, Andrew began to notice something else, the way people looked at them. Not in an overtly curious or strange way, but with something that resembled respect. He realized that, for all the differences between him and Zyra's people, the connection they had begun to form had not gone unnoticed. It wasn't just the fact that he was a human, but the way he was interacting with Zyra, listening to her, learning from her. That simple act of sharing this experience with her was building a bridge not just between them, but between their cultures. You're different from what I expected, Zyra said suddenly, breaking his thoughts. Andrew raised an eyebrow, glancing at her. How so? He asked, genuinely curious. She gave him a quick, almost hesitant glance. I don't know, she began slowly. Humans, from what I've heard, are unpredictable. We've heard stories of your species. Fierce, brave, but also sometimes reckless. Andrew chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. Yeah, I suppose that's true. We can be a bit wild at times. But you're also kind, Zyra said, her voice steady now, more sure of herself. You don't just take things at face value. You listen. You want to understand. Her words hung in the air, and Andrew couldn't help but feel a strange warmth spread through him. It wasn't a compliment in the traditional sense, but something about it felt deeper, more meaningful. He gave her a small smile. I try to, he said, the words coming out softer than he expected. They continued walking, the path before them now clear and open, with the sounds of the market filling the silence between them. As they passed a stall selling fresh fruit, Zyra picked up a small, brightly colored object and handed it to Andrew. Try this, she said, her voice light and playful. Andrew hesitated but took it from her, examining the strange fruit. It was unlike anything he had seen before, its skin smooth and almost translucent, with a soft glow that made it look like it was lit from within. He raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" "It's a rinny berry," Zyra explained. "Very sweet. Just be careful. The skin is delicate. If you squeeze too hard, it bursts." Andrew smiled at her, amused. "I'll be careful." He took a bite, and instantly, a burst of sweetness filled his mouth, the taste unlike anything he had experienced before. He couldn't help but laugh, a deep, genuine laugh that came from the surprise of the experience. "That's amazing," he said, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. Zyra grinned, clearly pleased with his reaction. "I'm glad you like it. My people have a saying. The simplest things can be the sweetest." Andrew looked at her, his smile softening. "I think I'm starting to understand that." It was strange, he thought, how something as small as a piece of fruit, something so simple, could bring them closer. But there it was, the beginning of a connection. They were learning, step by step, not just about each other's cultures, but about each other. And in that moment, Andrew realized that this experience, this journey, was becoming something more than just a diplomatic mission. It was an adventure, one that he wasn't facing alone. They were in this together. As the days passed, the bond between Andrew and Zyra only grew stronger. The awkwardness that had once lingered between them had slowly faded, replaced by a sense of comfort and trust. Their interactions, once formal and cautious, had become more natural, more personal. It wasn't just about the tour anymore. It was about two people from different worlds, learning to understand each other. One afternoon, they found themselves in a quiet corner of the city's Central Park, a green space filled with exotic plants and the sounds of alien birds calling out to one another. The park was a peaceful escape from the chaos of the bustling marketplace, and Andrew had learned that Zyra often came here to think, to reflect on her people's past and present. "It's strange," she said, gazing up at the sky, her violet eyes searching the stars above. "I never thought I'd feel so connected to another species. Especially not a human." Andrew chuckled, sitting down beside her. "Well, I guess we're both full of surprises." Zyra smiled, though it was a bittersweet expression. "We are," she agreed. "I never expected to find someone who would listen to me, who would want to understand my culture, my history. But you've done that, Andrew." Her words hung in the air, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. There was something vulnerable in her voice, something that made Andrew's chest tighten. He hadn't realized how much her words meant until that moment. I want to learn," he said quietly, his gaze on the distant horizon. "I think, deep down, we all want to be understood. But it's not always easy." Zyra nodded, her fingers gently tracing the edge of the bench they were sitting on. "No, it's not," she said softly. "But sometimes, the effort is worth it. I've never met anyone like you before. You're different from the humans I've heard about." Andrew raised an eyebrow, curious. "Different how?" "You're not afraid of difference," she explained, her voice steady. But there was a touch of wonder in it. Most humans, they're afraid of the unknown. They push it away, try to dominate it. But you, she turned to him, her eyes meeting his. You embrace it. You want to understand it. Andrew didn't know what to say to that. He had never thought of himself as particularly special. But hearing it from Zyra, someone who had seen so much of the galaxy, made him realize just how far the human race had to go, and how much more he himself had to learn. "I guess I just want to see things for what they are," he said after a moment, his voice low. "Not as something to conquer, but something to appreciate. Even if it's strange or different." Zyra's smile softened. "That's why you're different," she said simply. As the sun began to set, casting a soft golden light over the park, Andrew and Zyra sat together in companionable silence. It was a peaceful moment, the kind that felt fleeting but important. They weren't just tourists in each other's worlds anymore. They were something more. Friends, allies, maybe even something deeper. As the sky turned from gold to purple, Andrew felt a sense of calm wash over him. It was strange, but for the first time since arriving on this planet, he felt like he belonged here. Not just as a human among aliens, but as someone who had found a connection. A real connection. He glanced at Zyra, who was still looking at the stars, her face illuminated by the fading light. There was so much more he wanted to understand about her world, about the universe they both lived in. But for now, this moment, this quiet space between them, was enough. And that thought brought him a kind of peace he hadn't expected to find so far from home. The days continued to pass, and the quiet understanding between Andrew and Zyra began to evolve into something deeper, something more profound than either of them had anticipated. The feeling of mutual respect they had built grew stronger with each conversation, each shared experience. Their time together was no longer just about the diplomatic mission or cultural exchange. It was about two beings from vastly different worlds finding common ground. On one of their walks, as they wandered through the lush gardens of the alien city, Zyra stopped in front of a strange, towering tree. Its trunk was a shimmering silver, and its leaves glowed softly in the dim light. "This tree," Zyra began, her voice filled with reverence, "is considered sacred by my people. It represents the balance between life and death, between the past and the future." Andrew looked at her, intrigued by the tree's beauty and the way she spoke about it. "It's incredible," he said softly, his eyes fixed on the glowing leaves. "Does it have any special significance for you?" Zyra hesitated for a moment before answering. "It's a reminder of everything we've endured. My people have faced much hardship, and this tree represents the strength it takes to keep going, even when things seem impossible." Andrew could sense the weight in her words. There was something deeply personal in the way she spoke about her people's struggles. "I think I understand," he said after a pause. "Humans have a similar kind of resilience. We've been through our own challenges, but we always find a way to push forward." Zyra turned to him, a thoughtful expression on her face. "I've seen that. I've seen how you fight to survive, how you adapt to new situations. It's one of the reasons I respect your species." Her words caught Andrew off guard. He hadn't expected her to see them that way. "You're the first alien I've met who has said something like that," he said, his voice filled with surprise. Zyra smiled, a small, genuine smile that made her eyes light up. "I think you're more than just survivors, Andrew. I think you're capable of great things, even things you haven't yet realized." Her words lingered in the air, and Andrew felt a warmth spread through him. It was more than just praise. It was a recognition of something he hadn't thought about before. They were capable of great things, even in the face of adversity. And in that moment, standing there under the glowing tree with Zyra, he realized how far he had come on this journey, not just as a human, but as someone who had learned to see beyond the surface, to connect with others in a way he had never thought possible. The bond between them was growing stronger, deeper, and Andrew couldn't help but feel that, in some way, they were both changing because of it. As the soft glow of the tree illuminated their faces, Zyra spoke again, her voice gentle but firm. "There's a saying in my culture. The greatest strength comes from the most unexpected places. I think I'm starting to see what that means." Andrew smiled, his heart swelling with a quiet sense of pride. "Maybe we're both stronger than we think," he said, his voice filled with conviction. Zyra nodded, a smile playing at the corners of her lips. "Maybe we are." They stood in silence for a moment, the only sound being the soft rustling of the tree's glowing leaves in the breeze. It was a peaceful moment, one that felt like it belonged to only them, and Andrew couldn't help but feel a sense of hope rising in his chest. In a world so different from his own, in a place filled with unknowns, he had found a connection, one that was more profound than anything he had ever experienced. And in that moment, he realized that this was only the beginning of something much bigger. They were on the same path now, together, and no matter what came next, they would face it side by side. The days blended into weeks, and the bond between Andrew and Zyra deepened in ways neither had expected. Their time together became a natural rhythm, filled with moments of quiet understanding and shared experiences. As they spent more time exploring the alien world, their conversations shifted from the formalities of diplomacy to the more personal, deeper questions about life, loss, and the future. One evening, they found themselves on the edge of a high cliff, overlooking a vast, sparkling ocean that stretched out to the horizon. The sun was setting, casting hues of gold and orange across the water. The air was cool, the breeze gentle. They stood side by side, each lost in their thoughts. Andrew broke the silence first. "Do you ever wonder what comes next?" he asked, his voice quiet, but filled with curiosity. Zyra turned to him, her violet eyes reflecting the colors of the sky. "What do you mean?" she asked. "I don't know," Andrew replied, rubbing the back of his neck. "I guess I've just been thinking a lot lately. About what happens after all of this. After the mission, I mean." I came here thinking it was just another assignment, another job, but it's become more than that. Zyra studied him for a moment, as if weighing his words. For me, this mission has always been about understanding, she said slowly. About learning. About connecting. But I think, maybe, there's more to it than I realized. Andrew looked at her, his gaze meeting hers. There was something in her eyes, something deeper than the words she had spoken. He could see the vulnerability there, the uncertainty. It mirrored his own feelings. What do you think it all means? He asked. Zyra didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped closer to the edge of the cliff, her eyes fixed on the horizon. I think it means that we're not so different, you and I, she said softly. We both want the same thing. We want to understand. We want to grow. But we also have to be willing to face the unknown. Andrew's heart skipped a beat as her words sank in. He had been focused on the surface of things, the mission, the cultural exchange, but now, in this quiet moment, he realized that there was something much deeper happening between them. They were changing, both of them, in ways they couldn't fully comprehend yet. You're right, he said, his voice steady. We're learning, and we're changing. Maybe that's what makes this whole thing worth it. Zyra turned to face him fully, her expression soft. Maybe that's why we're here, she said. The words hung between them, unspoken but understood. The sky had darkened now, the stars beginning to twinkle overhead. The world around them was quiet, the only sound the distant crash of waves against the shore below. As they stood there, together in the stillness, Andrew felt something stir within him. It wasn't just about the mission, the planets, or the alien world around him. It was about the connection they had built, something real, something undeniable. And in that moment, as the stars shone brightly above them, he realized that he wasn't just a visitor on an alien world anymore. He was part of something bigger, something that transcended the boundaries of space, culture, and difference. They stood together, side by side, looking out at the vastness of the universe, and for the first time, Andrew felt truly at peace. Whatever came next, whatever challenges they would face them together. As the days turned into weeks, Andrew and Zyra found themselves in a new rhythm, one that felt both comfortable and natural. The bond between them had grown from mutual curiosity to something more profound, something unspoken, yet understood. They had shared moments of laughter, silence, and reflection, and with each passing day, Andrew found himself more and more drawn to the alien world around him, and to Zyra. One evening, they found themselves in the heart of the city, the streets alive with the energy of the local inhabitants. The air was filled with the sounds of distant music and the buzz of conversation as the city came alive in the night. It was a stark contrast to the quiet solitude they had shared at the cliffs, but the energy was infectious. There's something magical about this place at night, Andrew remarked, looking around at the vibrant lights that illuminated the streets. Zyra smiled, her eyes sparkling in the glow of the lights. Yes, she agreed. It's when my people come alive, when we truly celebrate who we are. They wandered through the city, stopping at stalls where vendors sold strange fruits, glowing fabrics, and intricate trinkets. Zyra explained the significance of each item, telling stories of their origins and the cultures behind them. Andrew marveled at how much history was woven into the fabric of this city, how every corner seemed to hold a memory, a story waiting to be told. As they walked, Zyra spoke of her people's struggles, how they had faced war, loss, and exile, but also how they had persevered, always adapting and growing. Andrew listened intently, realizing that their stories, while different, had so many parallels. They were both survivors, both striving to make their way in a world that often seemed indifferent to their existence. The streets eventually led them to a quiet courtyard, where a small fountain bubbled gently in the center. The peaceful sound of the water seemed to wash away the noise of the city, and for a moment, everything felt still. Zyra sat on the edge of the fountain, her legs dangling as she gazed into the water. Andrew joined her, the weight of the day's events settling into his bones. Do you ever feel like you don't belong? Andrew asked quietly, his gaze fixed on the rippling water. Zyra turned to him, her violet eyes reflecting the soft light of the fountain. Yes, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. There are days when I feel like I am caught between two worlds, not fully belonging to either one. She paused, her expression distant as she thought about her words. but I've learned to accept it. I've learned that sometimes, belonging doesn't come from where you are, but who you're with. Andrew nodded slowly, understanding more than she knew. I get that, he said softly. I've always felt like an outsider, even among my own people. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared understanding hanging in the air. In that moment, it wasn't about being from different worlds or cultures. It was about the connection they had built, the bond that had formed between them, despite everything. The sound of the city around them seemed to fade, leaving only the quiet comfort of each other's presence. I think I'm starting to understand what you meant, Andrew said, breaking the silence. About finding belonging in the people around you. Zaira smiled, her expression warm and genuine. Yes, she said. Sometimes, it's the people who make all the difference. As the stars began to twinkle above, Andrew realized that in this alien world, surrounded by strange sights and unfamiliar sounds, he had found something he hadn't known he was searching for, a connection, a sense of belonging, and a friendship that transcended the boundaries of space, culture, and species. The night stretched on, and for the first time in a long while, Andrew felt at peace, knowing that whatever the future held, he and Zaira would face it together. As time passed, Andrew and Zaira's connection deepened even further. They had come to understand each other in ways neither of them had expected when they first met. The small moments they shared, whether in quiet conversation or just in the peaceful silence of the alien world, had become more significant than anything else. They were no longer just a human and an alien. They were companions, each offering something to the other that went beyond their differences. One evening, as they sat by the edge of a small lake on the outskirts of the city, the air was cool, and the sky above was dotted with stars. The soft rustling of the leaves around them was the only sound, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. Do you ever wonder, Zaira began, her voice breaking the silence, what it would be like if we could stay like this forever? Andrew turned to her, his expression thoughtful. Stay here? In this moment? Zaira nodded. In this peace. In this understanding. It's like time slows down when I'm with you. Andrew let out a small laugh, the sound soft and almost reverent. I know what you mean. It's like everything else just fades away when we're together. He looked at her, his eyes meeting hers. I never thought I'd find something like this, someone like you, on a mission like this. Zaira smiled, her eyes reflecting the starlight above. Maybe that's the point, she said quietly. Maybe this mission was never about diplomacy, or exchange, or even culture. Maybe it was about this, about finding something real in an unexpected place. Andrew felt a warmth spread through him at her words. He hadn't thought about it that way before, but she was right. Everything had led to this. The mission, the travel, the uncertainty, it had all brought him here, to this moment, with her. I think I understand, he said softly. Maybe we were meant to find this. Maybe we were meant to find each other. There was a brief silence between them, and in that silence, there was an unspoken understanding. The world around them seemed to pause, the stars above them shining brightly, as if affirming their words. Andrew reached over, his hand brushing against hers, a simple gesture that felt more meaningful than anything else. I don't know what the future holds, he said quietly, but I do know that I want to face it with you. Zaira turned her hand over, her fingers intertwining with his. And I want to face it with you too. The words were simple, yet they carried the weight of everything they had shared, everything they had learned from one another. It was more than just a promise. It was a connection that transcended the differences between their worlds. As they sat there by the lake, their hands joined, they both knew that whatever came next, whatever challenges or uncertainties lay ahead, they would face it together. And in that moment, under the vast, starlit sky, Andrew felt more at home than he ever had before. The future, once uncertain and distant, now felt full of possibilities. And he was no longer alone in it. He had Zaira by his side, and that was all he needed.